Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. Council will continue to meet virtually until further notice. Meetings can now be viewed live on the city channel and live streamed on YouTube. Our first order of business is public comment, and I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation, which are or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. Once your name is called, please provide your name and neighborhood for the record. And I apologize, I do not have the names up right now, but I am pulling them up. Our first speaker of the day is, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, Kiyam Ansari. Okay, I do not see that.
Here. Yeah, he's not here.
I don't see that person with us. Our next speaker is Shaman Pomai, which will be followed by Naomi Mullen.
Greetings, everyone. I am Shaman Pomai Chakmam Yahalahi of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American People. I'm also the co-chair for the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council's Urban Agricultural Working Group and a steering member of the Three Rivers Agricultural Land Initiative, as well as the owner of Cultural Oasis and the owner of IPA, a traditional indigenous farming collaborative, as well as a former member of the Black Urban Gardeners and Farmers Cooperative. So I have a lot of work that I've done in the city of Pittsburgh with all of the people in the communities that are most adversely affected by the pandemic. Data is clear that the indigenous people and people classified as Black and Brown, people of color, have suffered disproportionately worse health and economic hardships throughout the pandemic and are expected to continue on throughout the recovery. It's obvious that the lack of investment in the local food system will only serve to perpetuate poverty and add to the current health crisis, which disproportionately affects indigenous people and people who identify as Black and Brown and people of color and other marginalized people of Pittsburgh. Disinvestment in the local food security systems will exacerbate these systemic issues for decades to come. Many of us have worked in the food justice for years, and we have firsthand experience in addressing the needs of the people most adversely affected. To end the food apartheid in our communities experience an extremely high increase of illnesses and deaths as a result of food insecurity during the pandemic. I, along with many of my indigenous people and Black and Brown people, work in the Pittsburgh food system. We work diligently together. Our community farms and gardens, along with larger farms, healthcare entities, NGOs, and the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council and Grow Pittsburgh, and created innovative initiatives. We worked around the clock to feed the people with the help of local businesses, many other nonprofits, farmers, chefs, and restaurants. We met the need. City Council investing in a healthy, sustainable food system is funds well spent to invest in the future health and physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of our future generations as our children suffer the most without basic food needs being met. You can be the City Council to set a precedence in the food security sustainability sector, doing your part in the history of Pittsburgh by changing the narrative of Pittsburgh's food apartheid system of oppression. Iluga'am, see it received. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. We now have Naomi Mullen, followed by Ikahana Hamalkina.
Naomi Mullen, Bonaire. Shady trees, not shady deals. My vision for former Bonaire school building as a green space is as follows. The perimeter on the north is evergreen trees for birds and continuous greenery. The western perimeter is deciduous trees to allow more sun in the winter. At the upper terrace is an apiary that donations have provided. A volunteer beekeeper tends the hives and collects the honey. There is a pollinator garden with wildflowers and many perennial species that require little to no watering. Volunteers from our community have planted and tend the garden. There are bricks with names on them that fundraising has created, and there are paths that meander throughout. This is a place for people of all ages to meet, contribute, and learn. Peace, not disruption. Peace, not nuisance. Green, not leaking. Green, not flood contribution. Green, not a carbon footprint. Livable needs beautiful greenery and peacefulness. Tear down problem properties, not low crime, stable neighborhoods. Shady trees, not shady deals. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Ikehana Halmalkina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Greetings and good day. In La Keshalakaing, my title is Ikahana Hal Makina. I am the Grand Inca of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aborigine American People, also known as Indigenous People of America. Since this pandemic, there has been a spike in violence. So it is a good idea to avert some of the funds for the American Rescue Plan for programs to address the violence in the inner city. Another topic is food sovereignty. To address the needs of the people by creating sustainable programs to give the people of the land the opportunity to be farmers once again. The indigenous people of America historically were always farmers. We always were stewards of our land and used food to take care of our needs and to heal our nations until our way of living was interrupted by commerce and corporate interests. This is a unique opportunity for the city of Pittsburgh and city council, along with the help of the current mayor, to address these concerns. Our voices must be heard and provisions must be made, for we are the rightful stewards of the land. Giving us unrestricted access to our land is the only answer to address a lot of the ill-conceived policies and notions that have happened to the indigenous American people of America.
Okay. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Natisha Washington, followed by John Boher.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natisha Washington. I'm an environmental justice organizer for One Pennsylvania, which is an organization that advocates for community members all around PA, with our home base being in Pittsburgh. I came here today to ask council to delay the vote for the American Rescue Plan until proper community engagement is done in all communities. As you might have heard in these coming days, there are many communities that did not know and weren't engaged about this plan until a week or so ago. We do understand the urgency in this plan, but as people who need the resources more than anyone, it should show you just how important this engagement is. For too long, voices have not been heard, as you all have come to see and understand more during these current movements, these protests, and many reports that talk about our city's racial disparities. We are not here to delay such urgent needs in the city's communities. We are simply just asking that our voices be heard before a final decision is made. There are many needs and concerns of residents who are also your voters that were not addressed or did not seem to be addressed in this budget. Pittsburgh is in a housing crisis. Economic developments continue to leave our low-income communities. Our water is toxic, our air is polluted. Food access, as you've heard, continues to be an impact on the health of our Black and Brown residents, and our school systems are a mess, and we see few of these issues being addressed in this plan when all of them should be addressed. This is a historic moment to build local solutions with all of our communities, not just a few. These communities have been disadvantaged for too long, and not having them be a part of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help change that would be a huge disrespect to the families who have to live out a decision they once again were not included in. So please delay this vote until our communities are given an equitable engagement process that I hope doesn't solely fall on the shoulders of our nonprofit organization and is supported by the city. Thank you all for giving me this time to speak. I hope that all the comments you heard today help you further understand this need. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Boer, followed by Carlin Lamberto.
Thank you. I am John Boer, and I'm a longtime resident of Bon Air. It seems that the Pittsburgh School Board has sold the Bon Air Elementary School to a real estate developer without any consultation with the Bon Air residents. The Pittsburgh School Board cannot produce a single resident of Bon Air who supports this sale, no matter what their spokesman tells the media. The over 800 residents of Bon Air know that this council cannot halt this sale, but council has the power to not only resolve that this sale should not happen, they can resolve that the property would be worthless to the real estate developer because the zoning will not be changed from the current R1 zoning. A resolution stating council's opposition to changing the zoning would allow the real estate developer to withdraw from this horrible sale without penalty. Please pass a resolution stating council's opposition to this sale and council's opposition to changing the existing R1 zoning. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carlin Lamberto, followed by Christina Howe, which is our last speaker.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. My name is Carlin Lamberto. I live in the Greenfield neighborhood of Council District 5, and I'm employed by the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. I'm here today to echo what many of my colleagues, food systems, public transit, and affordable housing advocates have voiced over the last several days. This American Rescue Plan Act funds budgeting process has been rushed. It hasn't genuinely considered the concerns of communities that have been most impacted by COVID-19. It hasn't been very democratic. I'm also here to advocate for the establishment of a $10 million food justice fund. In my role at the Food Policy Council, I wear a number of hats, but chief among them is my supporting the council's Urban Ag Working Group and the hardworking folks and organizations that run and support community gardens and farms in our city. As many of us well know, these people often exist at the very heart of their communities, providing nutritious food, community building, education, and safe spaces to their neighbors. And as Shaman Pamai mentioned earlier in the comments, during the worst of this pandemic, these food growers fed their communities and met the needs. In fact, in the spring of 2020, when Pittsburghers lined up for food distributions in numbers we had never seen before, and the realities of COVID-19 were beginning to sink in for many of us, City Council publicly acknowledged the critical importance of local food supply by passing legislation in support of urban agriculture. In the face of widespread and crushing food insecurity, some council members, both of which I believe are here today, were so moved by the critical importance of a local and sustainable food system that they searched for and allocated modest funds from their district budgets to support and explore urban ag projects in their district. And now we have access to over $300 million, and not a single line item in the proposed budget for those funds meaningfully addresses the needs of our food system. As has been mentioned time and time again, the proposed $10 million Pittsburgh Food Justice Fund would have a transformative impact on our local food system. Regarding community gardens and farms in particular, it would support critical infrastructure such as water access, which many of our gardens struggle with, garden beds, seedlings, pack houses, and cold storage. The needs are great, and small investments in these projects will have positive rippling effects in communities that have truly suffered through this pandemic. Finally, I encourage you to consider not only this fund and the final allocations for the American Rescue Plan, but also the voices and ideas of others who have spoken over the last several days. None of our benchmark cities have allocated all of their ARPA dollars, so please slow the process down and make sure that the people of Pittsburgh, who these funds are supposed to support, have a voice in saying how they're to be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Christina Howe.
Thank you. My name is Christina Howell. I'm Executive Director of Bloomfield Development Corporation and a resident of Bloomfield. I'm here representing our neighbors who we have heard from on this issue, as well as many other issues that we have gathered feedback on through an intense community process, which we believe in very robust and comprehensive community processes. Our organization does not feel that this process around the ARPA funding has been robust and comprehensive. It has not made any effort to go into the communities where people have the most barriers to attending these hearings during the day, and also have barriers to access, whether it's when we were in person, being asked to testify downtown, or via Zoom electronic access, excuse me. I'd like to echo all of those who came before me over the last several days in calling for a food justice fund and pointing out that food is critical for people's well-being. And if a family is hungry and needs to worry about where their next meal is coming from, how their community can better access food, then they can't focus on anything else. The other thing I would like to underscore is that the funding in this plan for affordable rental housing is woeful. There is a huge focus historically on funding for affordable ownership of homes. But if a family does not have affordable rental housing, they cannot focus on eventually owning a home. That keeps their path forward blocked. And then finally, I'd just like to underscore again that I understand that there are many urgent things in this budget, and that it was pointed out on Monday that these funds could then be changed by a will of council once they are voted on their path. But once those checks are written to the URA and other organizations.
Everybody knows our councilman, Bruce Strauss.
Then that funding is gone. And I can't see a will of council happening to take that funding back. I can't even imagine what that process would look like. So I'd like to ask that this, whatever is truly urgent, go through. But I would like to ask that as much as possible, if not all, be stopped for complete community process. Thank you.
Thank you. That does exhaust our list of registered speakers. Moving us on to our standing committee agenda. Would a clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess.
Here.
Mr. Coghill.
Here.
Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Kraus. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mrs. Kel-Smith.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle Chair.
Here.
8 members present.
Thank you. And I do believe we have Councilman Kraus with us, but we had to mute him. So our first committee of the day is Finance and Law, chaired by myself. We have one supplemental paper, Bill 1693.
Bill 1693, resolution authorizing the issuance of 3 warrants with a total sum of $150,000, which shall be allocated and paid as follows. $100 made payable to Robert Kramer in final settlement related to a litigation. and $50,000 made payable to Robert Kramer in settlement related to litigation, and $99,900, which is authorized to be transferred from the WCWEBA account related to a workers' compensation claim.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Now to our recommended papers, first being Bill 1661.
Bill 1661, ordinance amending ordinance number 41, amending the City Code of Ordinances at Title 6, Conduct Article 1, Regulated Rights in Action, Chapter 626A, temporary COVID-19 emergency paid sick leave, amending the temporary COVID-19 emergency paid sick leave ordinance.
Motion to approve, discussion.
Second.
I wanted to, recommit this so there was allowed more time to have more engagement with the business community and to hopefully get them on board with this amendment. And so in the coming days, I'm in the process of organizing that. I've already spoken to them, the business community, specifically the Chamber of Commerce and other large businesses that have had prior interest in this emergency paid sick leave bill. So I'd like to move this forward now, and if there's anything that comes out of that meeting, we can make the amendments, and I'll touch base with all members after that meeting and let them know how that goes.
Are there any other conversation from members?
Yeah,
Councilman
Mr. Chair,
Crowe?
may I? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you'll permit interrogatory, Councilman Wilson, you're asking us to move it ahead today as it existed without any change and then make possible amendments at final vote?
Correct.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll bow to the will of the council.
Okay, President Smith.
Councilman Wilson, I told you I'd be glad to work with you, but last I heard you were going to hold it today and work with have this meeting. So I wasn't prepared to vote for it. I hadn't really talked with anyone about it. So I would like to abstain today if you're going to move forward. But I really wish you would hold it, work through it, and then bring it back to council so we know what we're voting on.
All right, I apologize. I thought I mentioned that when we spoke.
Yeah, you mentioned you had a meeting. You did mention that you were going to work through it. So I thought that meant hold it and then work.
Yeah, I don't want to. I like to get this done before the break, and I don't want to risk it. So I'm happy to continue to work through it, but I'd like to keep it on the final vote for next week so that we can have this ready before.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to abstain today.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So,
Hold on,
Mr. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Sorry. Any other members first round? If not, second round, Councilman Kraus.
So, Mr. Chair, we have two Tuesdays yet to final vote. Is that right? Before recess?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So, Councilman Wilson, I'd be more than happy to help and assist in this. I worry a little bit about sending the wrong message that we are advancing the bill without making the changes. I mean, you are the sponsor. I'll be happy to defer, but we do have time if we were to hold it this week to still complete it before we leave for recess at the end of July. Whatever you wish.
I understand. I originally recommitted the bill because some members have reached out with concern, and I worked with them to recommit it and then to allow more time for this specific meeting, which is exactly the same meeting that occurred whenever we did the emergency, the original bill. Same individuals that in the business community that they'd like the same meeting to occur before we take the final vote. So, I mean, it is my my intention today is to vote on it, and I'm happy to work with, any concerns, but I would like to keep it on in the motion of, being able to take the final vote next Tuesday.
Good.
Okay. Any other members for second round? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Thank you. Bill receives an affirmative recommendation. That moves us to Bill 1588.
Bill 1588, resolution transferring a total of $380,000 within the 2021 operating budget from the Department of Public Works to the Department of Parks and Recreation for the purpose of increasing pay for lifeguards and reopening as many pools as possible for the 2021 season.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Second.
So in our long saga, we don't have any updates this week. And we are sad to have to say that. Madam President, I don't know if you have anything to add, but we've struck out on the many different avenues of places where we were trying to get access to other pools. We did succeed in having Parks and Rec increase their wages, which they were able to do within their own budget, since there are 10 pools not open. And that did help them get at least a few lifeguards. It is still a very thin staffing levels for the open pools. So we are still encouraging people, especially certified lifeguards, to consider joining Parks and Rec to make it, to keep those pools open for the hours that we intend to keep them open. The staffing is really stressful for the department. Madam Clerk, Madam President, sorry, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I did. Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. I just want to say, I want to first thank you for working on this so hard, because we're getting so many calls from people that have no place for their kids to go, can't get to the swimming pools that we have. And you were really a champion and fighting for this. And I just want to thank you for that, because we tried to think outside the box. And I do want to thank Chief of Staff Gilman, Chief Casey, but I really want to also thank the Pittsburgh Foundation. They had representation at all the meetings, trying to come up with anything that they could do. And Heinz and we had people at the first meeting. And so I thank them both, because I think that they were really ready and willing and ready to help us. And same with Port Authority. And the University of Pittsburgh, Jimmy Williams contacted me this week, and they do have some programs where kids can swim for free in their pools. But he said that in the fall, this summer program is already filled, but in the fall, he sent me information to people who might want to join for the fall. But getting through this summer has been really difficult. But I do want to say, although we're tabling it, we're going to continue to work through that. And we want to be ready for next year. But I think if anybody has any solutions or knows of any lifeguards, we even asked the universities to offer credits and incentives to students that are, attending school to possibly become a phys ed teacher, or something that we could do to incentivize getting people to take a job position to get lifeguards started. So, I mean, we went as far as asking, how could we open up the fire hydrants? I mean, it was a really difficult challenge, just trying to figure out something outside the box. So I appreciate all the people that came to the table to try to help us, and to know that the public know that we're going to continue to work behind the scenes, even though the legislation is not there.
Right. So the legislation isn't really relevant anymore for a variety of reasons, that there's budget in-house and the changes that we're making to the operating budget probably today. So we'll just motion to table this bill, because it's really, while we'll continue to work on increasing safe outdoor recreation, this bill isn't really needed. So a motion to table.
May we have a roll call vote?
Reverend Burgess.
Aye.
Mr. Coghill.
Aye.
Ms. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Kraus.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mrs. Kell Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strasburger.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Lavelle Chair.
Aye.
Ayes 9, no 0, bill is tabled.
Thank you. We now have 4 bills coming up related to ARP dollars. I'm gonna skip Bill 1652 because the subsequent bills all point back to that main bill. So I think it'll make the most sense to amend the other bills first. So can we take Bill 1653 and we also have Kevin Paulus be available?
Bill 1653, resolution amending resolution number 645, entitled Resolution Making Appropriations to Pay the Expenses of Conducting the Public Business of the City and for meeting the debt charges thereof for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2021, so as to reopen the 2021 budget to account for American Rescue Plan funding.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I thought the motion was to amend.
Well, we now need a motion to amend, Councilman Kraus,
Motion to amend.
Second, with discussion.
with discussion. Director Paulus, you want to walk us through the amendment?
Sure. Good morning, council members. This piece of legislation is just to amend the original proposed estimate for the overall expenditures for the operating budget. When we put forth the proposed ARP plan, we had estimates in there for the expenses to the operating budget. We have now put those into our operating budget software, so we know the actual costs. And this is just an amendment to true up those costs.
Thank you. Any discussion from members?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Gross?
Yes. Hi, Director Paulus. Were there any additional positions added?
Yes, there were.
Okay.
Oh, since the original proposed ARP plan?
Right.
No, I do not believe so, with the exception of one patient care coordinator. I'm also joined by Assistant Director Patrick Cornell. Pat, would you be able to assist with this question for the positions?
Mr. Cornell, could you just identify yourself and your position? I know that Director Paulus just said it, but I didn't quite.
Sure. Patrick Cornell, Assistant Director for the Operating Budget in OMB. No, there were no additional positions between the prior iteration of the American Rescue Plan proposal and this current one that would have changed the number for this bill in particular.
So I just received this morning the question that I asked a week ago, the answer to the question I asked 1 week ago about the original spreadsheet, which was, while all of the July 1st layoffs are secured, were the January 1st workforce reductions fully replaced? And the answer last week was, well, somewhere and somewhere not. So thank you, Director Paulus, but I really just kind of maybe I got that last night, but I didn't realize I had it. You sent it yesterday. And so I was able to open that and look at that. And I'm concerned that what I see is, it looks to me like the planning department has not been restored fully. And in my district, which has a lot of demands on zoning staff and planning staff, not just from real estate development, but also from people trying to open businesses who very often have to also get a zoning approval. These reductions really hurt. And in terms of doing projects like the inclusionary zoning iPod that I just proposed to further expand coverage of inclusionary zoning, our planning staff struggles to be able to handle those projects. We outsource planning for neighborhood master planning. And I've proposed 2 budget years in a row, more increased staff to planning. I know some members don't support that, but I think that that is a part of being able to do neighborhood investment, to create neighborhoods of opportunity, to create the kind of city that we talk about in words is largely based here. When we talk about the table, it's largely based on our land use authority, and it takes staffing to implement. And so I'm deeply concerned about the fact that there's no consideration to increasing that staffing. And I didn't see an increase to the PLI staffing either. Am I correct?
So for the restoration of the positions, OMB worked with every department director to review all of the positions that were originally eliminated, the vacant positions for this budget document. So any of the changes reflected in what was restored from that list received major input from the departments and is a plan that they are on board with. In addition to that, there were some new positions that were added that I believe would address what you had just brought up. Patrick, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So working with Director Dash, and this is part of the new position line as opposed to the restored position line. There were some swaps that Director Dash had requested that were worked into the plan as presented to. And that's shifting a resilience and climate analyst to a planner, swapping a zoning specialist for an additional planner, and then increasing some swaps, planner for senior planner, principal planners, senior planners, et cetera.
Net zero.
I'm sorry?
Net zero. There were swaps.
Correct.
Right.
But they were worked through with Director Dash.
I know that. But I still say that these levels are too low, and I just want that on the record. And similarly, we've been lobbying as council members to the administration for myself 6 years to do remediation and make our buildings for lead safety and to start inspecting for lead safety because we know we have a problem with lead blood poisoning in our children. And that we know from the county health department that that is the main source is lead paint, because we are a city mostly of 100-year-old homes that now that paint is many, many years old and is flaking and peeling off and poisoning our kids. And we've been told now for 4 years that we can't do it because we don't have the money for staffing. And I said that last week, and I'll say it this week again, and I'll continue to say it. And then we were told we were waiting for the rental registry, mostly because of the revenue it would generate to pay for positions, because a city department can issue fees to cover its work, but we don't have to wait for fees to budget for those positions. And I think we should budget for them. So I just needed to say that, and I will continue to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross. Any other members? Councilman Wilson.
Yeah, I just want to talk about this idea that if we hire four lead inspectors, that we're going to solve the lead issues of
I
children.
didn't say that. I said start. Excuse me. That was out of order.
Well, you said that, you've been told that if we hire 4 lead inspectors, then that'll, but we can't hire them to do it. I mean, it's up to the county right now to inspect. We've been having meetings with the advocacy groups, and I think it's time that we recognize that if we're going to take on the responsibilities of what the county's doing, it's much more than just 4 inspectors, and we all know that. So I just want to squash the notion that if we hire 4 lead inspectors, that we're ready to do that. We're not, and so we just need to recognize that.
Thank you. Any other members? If not, I do believe the money for lead abatement is actually in the next amendment, so we'll get to that. But if no further members, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill is amended.
No.
That was actually just on the amendment. So
Aye.
one no on the amendment. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
1, 2 in opposition. The bill receives an affirmative recommendation. Thank you. We'll now go to Bill 1654.
Bill 1654, resolution amending resolution number 646 entitled Resolution Fixing the Number of Officers and Employees of the City for the 2021 fiscal year and the rate of compensation thereof, and setting maximum levels for designated positions so as to reopen the 2021 budget to account for American Rescue Plan funding.
Motion to approve with discussion.
Need a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Defer.
I believe we now need a motion to amend.
Motion to amend.
Second.
Thank you. The motion to amend is on the table. Director Polish, you want to walk us through this?
Sure. This piece of legislation is an annual piece of legislation that we submit with every annual budget document. The amendment to this piece would be the addition of one patient care coordinator in the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services. That position is going to be is proposed to be added as part of the proposed ARP plan. So we had to amend this to reflect that change. That is the only change to this.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst members? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is amended. One abstention. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you.
No.
One abstention, one opposed. Bill receives an affirmative.
Actually, I'm getting lost on which bill. Which bill was this? What number? Can you tell me the number?
1654.
1654. Did you jump from 52 to 64 or 54?
We didn't do 52 because all these bills all point back to the main bill, which is 52. So we've done 53. We just approved 54. We'll do 55 and then go back to 52.
Okay, I'll also vote no. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so two opposed. Bill received an affirmative recommendation. Bill 1655.
Bill 1655, resolution further amending resolution number 647, effective December 23rd of 2020 as amended, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2021 Capital Budget and the 2021 CDBG Program and the 2021 through 2026 Capital Improvement Program by increasing various line items by $57,349,840 with funding from the American Rescue Plan.
Motion to
Second.
approve.
Need a motion to amend?
Motion to amend.
Second.
Director Paulus?
Hi, this again is another piece of annual legislation that we use to allocate and legislate capital funding. So all the amounts that are amended in the chart in the piece of the amended legislation will match the projects that are listed in the proposed ARP plan. For capital projects, we legislate on an annual, yearly basis because of the fluctuations in costs for materials and labor as you move through the many phases of a project. And so moving forward with the proposed ARP plan, OMB would submit an annual piece of legislation like this to reflect the construction costs or the project costs in each year of that plan.
Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Bill is amended.
No.
Oh, sorry, this is amendment.
This is the amendment.
I'll vote aye in the amendment. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gross?
I'll vote no. Thank you.
Okay. One in opposition to the amendment. The bill is amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
No.
Two in opposition. The bill receives an affirmative recommendation. We'll now go back to 1652, which I believe will need an amendment by substitution. Bill 1652.
Bill 1652, resolution appropriating federal American Rescue Plan funding for a 4-year period from January 1, 2021 through December 31st of 2024, as recommended by the mayor and the Pittsburgh Recovery Task Force at a total cost not to exceed the amount received from the United States Department of Treasury.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Can we have an motion to amend by substitution?
Motion to amend by substitution.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman Director Paul, excuse me, you want to walk us through this?
Sure. This table supplements the original table of the proposed art plan. Some of the changes or additions to the plan would be $2 million for lead paint project. We've already discussed the operating lines that changed once we put those into the budget software. An allocation for Duncan Street steps were also added for 500 and other step improvements for $598,000. There's another allocation for demolition of structures in totality of $2 million. Also added to this amendment would be $80,000 for a grant match for the Kirkwood Avenue lot and EV infrastructure, as well as changing the allocation for lead line replacement projects to $17.5 million.
Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? If
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Gross.
Sorry. So for the record and for the public's information, we were emailed these amendments at 10:12, I think my email says today. So we're all trying to understand what the director is saying, look at these new, this is an amendment by substitution, so it entirely replaces what we got last week. And so am I supposed to be looking at that full spreadsheet now that was attached last week and now it's the new spreadsheet? And is there any change to the resolution language? Because I certainly have not had a chance to come through while in session and voting on other bills, the resolution that was originally put on the table compared to whatever the resolution is now. And certainly the what was it, 100-line spreadsheet from last week compared to the 100-line spreadsheet from now. So you're gonna have to forgive me. You're gonna have to give me a little time here and answer some questions. Is that what I'm supposed to be looking at?
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
The language of the resolution has not changed. The chart is what has summarized those changes. And apologies if you didn't get it until this morning. I sent it over to council, the finance chair and the clerk's office last night around 9 p.m.
Sure. Still, so the public hasn't seen it at all, right? So, even people in our, room here, like if we were in chambers, at least we'd be having paper copies in hands that we'd be handing out to the room. But this isn't even viewable, right? I mean, Madam Clerk, it's not attached to Legistar or anything, is it?
No, we couldn't attach it until it's presented. So
yeah, that's fine. Certainly we can make verbal amendments at standing committee, but this is of great import, this legislation right here. And we've just had 2 public hearings about it in the last week, which were a little rushed, and only given people the chance to react to the legislation that was on the table. And now we're amending it or have a proposal for amendment here, and it's a lot to process. So forgive me, I'm going to kind of scroll. I've just moved it so that I can actually read it. Luckily, I have a very large screen that I work on, and I'm going to scroll down. So when you say, I still see, I think I've got the right attachment open, a $10 million for PWSA for lead line replacements. Now, myself and the public heard statements from the administration that line was going to be addressing lead paint also. But PWSA does not do anything about lead paint, so you'll have to explain that to me.
The original proposed art plan had an allocation for lead line replacement projects in a sum of $20 million, 10 million in 1 year, 10 million in the second year two. In the amended proposed plan, that allocation is decreased to $17.5 million. And there is a separate $2 million allocation labeled lead paint project that is in a sum of $2 million that we envisioned would be in a city special revenue account. So it could handle staffing if need be, if that was the way we were going to go.
I'm sorry, I can't find it. Can you point it to me?
On the amended file that you're looking at should be line 26 in the Excel file.
Mine says Hazelwood Senior Center facility upgrades. I do see the $7.5 million in year two to PWSA. So I know I'm looking at I should be looking at the right spreadsheet.
I'm sorry, it's line 20. My apologies.
Okay, so if I scroll up to line 20, lead paint project. Tell us about what that is.
I believe I'm also joined by Chief Staff Gilman. Chief Gilman.
I would also be happy to comment for if you'd permit an interrogatory.
Certainly, Councilwoman.
Thank you. This was added as was intended initially upon my request. So I requested to the administration that because of the conversations that 4 council members have been having with the Lead Safe Coalition, that there's been ongoing discussion about the need for not only lead line replacement, but lead paint and other types of lead building mitigation, that there be something allocated toward that proposal as we get more clarity as to what is necessary for that bill to be able to pass and to be funded. It seems as if $2 million is a placeholder for when we have greater clarity as to what the actual cost would be and what future infrastructure bills might be able to do in terms of supplementing PWSA's amount that they're expecting versus what the city might need to be able to have a fully funded bill and pass it. So just wanted to clarify that that was something that I requested on behalf of the group of council members that have been advocating for that bill.
Right, and I'll just say for the record that the 4 council members all heard the Director of Permits, Licenses, and Inspection, Director Kinter, say she would need 4 inspectors to start this work. We were all in the same meeting and we all heard that, and we all heard her say, I don't have it in my budget, and that's what I would need. And she also said it would cost less than $400,000 to put on staff 4 inspectors for lead paint. That I said, well, over a 3-year span, that's only $1.2 million. And she said, that's right. And we said, okay, let's go look for that money for the record. And so I do think that that is a good place to start, and that inspections is where we should start. We may not know where every apartment in the city of Pittsburgh is because we don't enforce occupancy permits, but we know where some of them are. We certainly know where everyone who's being evicted is because their addresses are on their dockets. We certainly know where everybody who's had another kind of health or citation report, right? Every time a tenant calls for PLI for an inspection, we know where that apartment is. We know where enough apartments are that we can get started. We certainly know the direct addresses of every child who has had tested positive for lead poisoning. We know where they live. And we know that the county health department has already done those inspections. County health department inspects after a child has been poisoned by lead. That's what they do. We have the power of inspections for public safety, and we should start using it. And we haven't because we haven't staffed those positions, for the record. So I'm glad to see this. I hope that it starts with inspections. I hope that it starts us on this path of being proactive so that we inspect before a child is poisoned by lead. And I will continue to keep saying that. So I also think the public has not seen nor had time to adjust not only a 4-year plan, which I will also say for the record, none of our 15 benchmark cities has undertaken. Each and every one of them has proposed either nothing yet, only 3 of them I think has proposed nothing as of last week. 12 of them acknowledge that there are immediate needs both in their city payroll and in basic needs in their population, and as proposed money to go out the door, I think nothing above 30%. And then they promised each and every one of the 12 cities a robust public conversation that goes both ways, that continues into the future, so that we know that so they know, their mayors and their city councils know that they're spending money to meet people's needs and meet their future needs. I don't see here, Director Paulus, anything around food infrastructure and food systems. We've heard robust testimony, right? I've lost track. I've tried to take notes, honestly. These are all the notes from the Saturday public hearing and the Monday night public hearing. Today it's only Wednesday, but many, many, many of our constituents in the city of Pittsburgh have explained to us eloquently that while it's really important that we've started meeting the needs for hungry households and distributing meals, and that is something we should continue, and we can maybe even improve, and thank you for the data on that, Director Paulus, but that we also need to invest in food systems, and that is a different thing, right? From food production to food handling to food storage to food distribution, we can do a better job allowing our residents to have what they like to call food sovereignty, control and input over the production and distribution of their food. We don't have that here. That's not in this plan, even after a week's worth of testimony. And I think it should be. I also see that what I complained about a week ago, which was that there's $121,693,324, what I consider front loaded in the column 1, year 1. That money is not going to be expended in the next 5 months. It doesn't need to be in the 2021 column. And if I'm not mistaken, Director Paulus, that is even higher than last week's number. Oh my gosh, I just moved my spreadsheet, Chief Gilman, and I now see you there. But since I had a giant spreadsheet up on my screen, I didn't even know you had joined us, so I apologize. But let's just answer that last question. Director Paulus, is the 2021 column even bigger than last week? You're muted. If you're saying something, I can't hear you.
Sorry, yes, I was muted. Yes, I'm trying to look at the different versions.
Yeah, we all are.
It looks slightly higher, yes.
Yeah, all right. So Chief Gilman, I do see you there. Can you add any information? Were you here to speak to the lead line? Not lead line, but lead program?
I'm here to answer anything council asks that I can answer.
I have 2 questions. So that one, and then if you could speak more to the guaranteed basic income that I did get an email about this morning.
Sure, happy to, Councilwoman. To the lead program, and I think Councilperson Strasburger outlined it relatively well, and you hit many of the numbers on the head. As I understand them, we think $2 million at least allows the start you talked about with the conversation of 4 inspectors. That, as your math very, very accurately reflects, several years of funding that plus more. So whether that turns into, through these conversations the administration and council have been having with Women for the Healthy Environment and their partners, obviously the inspectors are a start. There may be, and I'm saying maybe, remediation grants, other partnerships with nonprofits. That's why it is kind of loosely defined and being put in a special revenue account so that there is that flexibility. Once we start inspecting and advancing and seeing those needs, the money is there and allocated to to allow some flexibility, but it would start with the ability to hire positions dedicated to lead as the need you outlined. And that came from the PWSA lead, as we announced when we released the ARP plan. The 20 million in our release talked about being both water and lead, and we needed to reflect that appropriately in the legislative item in front of you, which is the purpose of the amendment at the moment. To the guaranteed basic income, I think you asked both the kind of legal and policy question. We are able to provide you some legal analysis, certainly not comprehensive in total, as you saw this morning. You rightfully pointed out, I'll follow up with the solicitor with some more detail into where federal and state law intercede on this issue. But as I had said in an email to you last night, in addition to the legal question, the guaranteed basic income pilot, when we were looking before ARP was an issue and we saw a funding opportunity there, given the state restrictions, we had set it up through a 501c3. There is a full-time executive director, right term contractor, being paid with the grants that have already been given. So there is some operational challenge to moving that internal, now that grants have already been received and processed, a person contracted and that process underway. I'm not going to sit here and say impossible, but operational challenges to do that would make it more difficult.
I think I got confused somewhere. So the grants that already have been received, are you talking about the grants from Jack Dempsey, is it?
Jack Dorsey. Gave some of those dollars are in, some will be our matches upon us raising other dollars.
So I don't remember receiving those. So council has to vote on donations received.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Councilwoman. That's what I was saying. When we set it up through 1PGH because of the state restriction pre-ARP, that is why the Dorsey grants went to 1PGH, and 1PGH has been able to enter into a contract with the director of the program. That's why I was saying moving it to the city would be challenging operationally because of that structure that was established pre-ARP.
Right? Well, that's two different things. The ARPA money is here now and doesn't need to leave. I didn't ask that 1PGH money be writing a check to the city treasury, but I'd be all for it. But I didn't ask that. But that would be, I think, what the point was, that our nonprofits or other nonprofits donate to the city treasury. So what we see is that Seattle is handling it, I believe, in-house, doing direct cash payments. I think Boston is doing direct cash payments in-house. I think St. Louis is doing direct cash payments, but they might have hit some bumps. And we're closely following that. I was trying to scroll down some updates from my staff. So what I heard was that, yeah, it might actually be possible for us to handle this in-house. And I would be supportive of doing that. Since you brought up 1PGH though, and since this does say, writing a check to a private nonprofit, I'm assuming that means that 1PGH actually exists as a 501c3 nonprofit?
That is correct. It is a legal 501c3.
And so we can see their 990s?
I'm not whatever the required things for a 501c3 to file, I'm sure they are filing them. I'm not the expert on that, but yes, they are a 501c3 with following the regulations and filing taxes and all the stuff they should do.
The Treasury Department, right, the IRS. That's where people, like I just in the last week myself went to look and check into some nonprofit 990s, their tax returns on the IRS website. And then who's the board? So here's what I would like us to all have the same understanding of. When the city receives a donation above, I think it's $5,000, I forget the limits, that has to be publicly recorded. Right? The public has to know who's giving the city money for what. And so the way to do that is that it comes to the council table. And we, there's a resolution, yes, we received this donation and here's what it's for, right? So who's it from and what's it for? That is not, the public doesn't have an understanding of that if it's not a public entity. So, for a strictly nonprofit, like a 1PGH, You're not entitled to go to their board meetings. You're not really entitled to have public comment. You don't have a voice on who's the board members. You can't vote them in or you can't vote them out. And so there's a real difference. It's the 1PGH is not subject to, if it's a 501c3, it's not subject to state sunshine laws the way city council is. So who is the board? So it's either under city, it's either a city program or it isn't, right? If it's a city program, all the stuff about sunshine law and voting people in and out and being able to follow the money, that all applies to your public city local government. It does not apply to a nonprofit. So, you know, is their website, does it have the board listing on it? I didn't go look, I have to admit.
There is a website, Councilwoman. I'm trying to look as I answer your question about whether or not the board's on it, though I'm happy to have announced the board publicly before and obviously happy to share that, but I was trying to answer your question about the website here. Yes, the board is on the website, as are the bylaws and the 990s, all on the main page of the About section.
Great. All right. So I actually was able to just pull it up. It's a little kind of
1pgh.org.
1pgh.org, partners, public measures of success. Grant Irvin, Chief Resilience Officer from the City of Pittsburgh. Dan Gilman, Chief Staff, City of Pittsburgh. Anna Hollis, Executive Director, Amachi, Pittsburgh. Valerie McDonald Roberts, retired Chief Urban Affairs Officer, City of Pittsburgh. Bob Nelkin, retired CEO of United Way. Melanie Ondek, Senior Grants Officer, City of Pittsburgh. Lindsay Powell, Deputy Chief of Staff, City of Pittsburgh. Vincent Quattrino, Founding Partner, Quattrino Rafferty. I see the bylaws. I won't read those on air. There is a link because while you clearly have city officials and employees dominating being the majority of board votes, it depends on how those board members are appointed, whether that will continue into the future. That 1PGH was a concept that the mayor testified here in his annual addresses repeatedly that was to be kind of the pot that our nonprofit partners would put funds into in cash into. It gives me pause. I really don't like that the public funds are going into the pot, what it looks to me like first. And I think that other cities can, I'm supportive of the cash assistance grants and I'm enthusiastic to see them roll out. But if other cities can and are doing direct cash assistance, I think we should too, for public accountability, for public control, for reporting out. And then the concept of 1PGH being where we would have kind of public goods paid for by private nonprofit donations because they aren't paying enough taxes in the city was also something that people were like, well, okay, it'd be better if they just wrote a check to the city treasury. But if this is some kind of compromise, you know, it was not the top choice, but at least it was a compromise. But that's not what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing you proposing to transfer public funds into a private nonprofit. And I just don't think that's a great idea. You can respond if you'd like.
I'll focus on the basic income piece. So obviously happy to talk to you about 1PGH under publicly, but not to the ARP piece. Again, because of the state law prohibiting direct cash payment, as Solicitor Hilton shared with you, again, I'm speaking pre-ARP. The structure set up was to do it through 1PGH, which having these mayor's funds is common in other cities. It's been highly successful in New York and others. We also have a number of there are grants that at times require a 501c3 partner, like some of the work we're doing in Hazelwood with Councilman O'Connor in the Greenways that come in was the purpose of it. So we set it up as ACE PGH, part of 1PGH with the grant from Jack Dorsey, not public money so that we could be able to do that and then go out and raise other dollars to fund the guaranteed basic income pilot. Once ARP came about and guaranteed basic income payments was what we believe a clear legal and acceptable use under the federal guidelines, rather than continue to knock on doors and try to raise money from foundations and corporations and others, and given the incredible need to support African-American women in the city at under 50%, we decided to use the ARP money to fund the actual payments and to use the outside grants we received to pay the overheads, that's staffing, that's research, et cetera. And so given that it had already been structured at 1 PGH because of the state law, we believed to get the dollars out to those in need, this was the fastest and most efficient way. Any agreement, even after today, to send the money would still have to come back to council, and certainly council, and we would work with council on any transparency requirements. There is no intent to do anything that is not transparent with this. We've been very public with the mayor's leadership on guaranteed basic income and working through the national partnership. And so dollars that are transferred with reporting guidelines back to council and transparency, it's something we'd gladly work with you on. It's important that the public understands that our whole point is to show the success of this model and change state and federal policy. So we want to be, more than transparent. We want to be blasting it from the mountaintop.
But it would be optional. When it's in the public entity, it's required by state law.
As I stated, anything going there would have to come back through council, and council could put in requirements so that it is not optional.
Then we could do that before we vote on approving a $2.5 million transfer to 1 PGH too, right? If we were given more time.
That's what I'm stating, Councilman. Today is not an approval of a transfer of $2.5 million to 1 PGH. Today is an approval of a budget reopening that involves showing an ARP spending plan. Any agreement to go into a transfer would have to come back to council, where you could do it before. That is not what's being voted on today.
So you also said that you were, that this would allow the allocations or the cash payments to begin. When did 1 PGH receive the actual check from or transfer from Mr. Dorsey?
I don't know the answer to that.
It's been in hand, at least publicly announced as I think last September, that you'd received it and that you would be cutting those checks from 1 PGH before the end of 2020. So I think if you had, there was urgency, and I also do think those checks should have started.
Respectfully, Councilwoman, as announced at the time, Jack Dorsey's dollars were not for the direct payments. They were #1 matching grant, and we had to raise the other money to do it, so that we were not legally allowed to use that. And the majority of the money is not in hand. There is some money that allowed us to hire the director to start putting in the framework to issue the checks. All of the money I know is not in hand and was a match. Significant piece was a match for dollars we raised and was very specifically not to be used for the direct payment.
Well, I guess that wasn't exactly clear since we didn't have the legislation in front of us, since it wasn't public dollars. So thank you for the update. But that kind of proves my point. It's a little harder to keep track of, even for someone as concerned about it as I am and supportive of the initiative. It's really hard to keep track of, and it's not in the public record. So yes, thank you. I would like for council to put some controls in place before there is any transfer of public funds to a private nonprofit for, again, it was, I think, lost there in what you said, that the private $3 million donation from Mr. Dempsey, or matching grant from Mr. Dempsey, under state law would have been precluded from being dispersed by the city, is the interpretation of our solicitors. Although what I read that I got this morning wasn't quite as clear as you put it, I think. But that these ARPA funds are clearly allowed and so don't need to be commingled in 1 PGH. That's still how I'm reading the situation. But if the will of council is to allow that transfer, I do hope that my colleagues and I would work on putting some transparency controls in place so that we can all keep more current. I appreciate it. I do have few other points while I still have the floor on this one. And I think I touched on it already when I talked about the fact that I don't see here in the amendments allocations to food systems, but particularly there was a clear call for $10 million for a food justice fund. And I just wanted to update members as we're looking at our 15 benchmark cities, which we've been comparing ourselves to for 20 years or more, that I see things like funding for a good food kitchen in Seattle, which works to strengthen a local food pipeline, because again, you need to have small scale, accessible, inclusive, other parts of the food system like food handling, food storage, food processing, food cold storage, food distribution at a scale that small local business owners and community gardeners can access. That isn't, I always do a contrast to like the 30,000 square foot Giant Eagle cold storage facility. They don't have access to that. They need smaller scale. I've known food producers who rented even a single pallet in cold storage. And that was the scale that they needed. And it was very affordable to do that, to basically just have shared space in someone else's cold storage, which was in the Strip District, but is now gone and is now luxury apartments. So there has been a net loss in local businesses that support local food over time. Most of them were congregated in the Strip District, from trucking companies to ice companies to warehousing to cold storage, and those are now long gone. And so I think it's something that other people, other cities that we compare ourselves to are doing with these funds. And we loudly heard a call for a $10 million food justice fund. And I'm very supportive of that call to action. I don't see it here. But I think I'll wrap up since I took up a great deal of time and there may be other members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members on the amendment? Councilman Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify that, I think the comments around lead inspectors, I think we just need to understand that we first need to insert our ability to inspect in the International Property Maintenance Code. And then we need the ability to get inside the homes to inspect. Currently, that ability is limited. So once the rental registration, which would really open the doors for our inspectors to get inside, that would allow a very thorough inspection. So I just want to be on the record for why I am saying that if we just immediately just hire 4 inspectors, we still have a lot of work to do. So, but I'll hold other comments about the budget.
Thank you. Any other members on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in second round.
Second round, I appreciate it. I just wanted to emphasize what Chief Gilman assured us of, and I appreciate, Chief, you clarifying the process for the public and for us, that this allocation does not authorize any of the transfers in year 1. And I have been emphasizing that. So I want to make sure that I understood you clearly and everybody understands you clearly. So there will be no checks written for PWSA, for the URA, for Avenues of Hope, for 1PGH without further public process, specific resolutions clearly identified in front of council where people would have public comment, and we would have time for further covenants or requirements on those funds, like transparency, et cetera.
All right, ask Director Paulus to also back me up, because I want to make sure we're 100% accurate and transparent on this point. I'll answer, and then Director Paulus, please publicly correct me if I misstate it for council and the public. These are budget bills, therefore the allocations within the city budget, i.e. positions being reinstated, the 3% cost of living adjustment for non-union employees. Those things, this is the authorization. Those could move forward with your approval today and Tuesday. Transfers to any outside organization, and the same would be true with capital. So dollars that now can go towards the Davis Avenue Bridge or Irvine Street sidewalks or something like that, those are your approval. Transfers to an outside organization, i.e. PWSA or the URA, would require council approval of either a new co-op or amending existing cooperation agreements for the transfer of those funds, I believe. Director Paulus, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct, Chief. That would be the process.
Okay, so that is, I think, important for everyone to hear, and we can all look out for that. I have to ask you one more thing, Chief. Yesterday, the 57th Street steps collapsed. We've been going back and forth on it for 2 years, right? Of trying to find funds, trying to do some improvements, and then they would collapse again. It looks like a beautiful job. You announced on Twitter that the mayor would be allocating funds for the 57th Street step entire project. There's, for everyone's information, there's one house to which that is the only access. There's no other, you can barely even walk to the house, right? You have to walk up those steps. There's no driveway or anything. But what you've added here today is Duncan Street steps.
I apologize. That is, I will take full responsibility. You are talking about the correct steps, and if you would want to make or would be willing to make some sort of verbal amendment, certainly I welcome that. We also tried to list it, and I don't have it in front of me. You do the wording because we don't know the exact cost of those steps. Those would be where we start. We don't know the exact cost, so this number is a guess. It was meant to say kind of comma or slash critical step repair so that there was that flexibility that we weren't allocating an exact amount. But those are the steps we are intending to start on, and I've directed Domi to start the boring and everything else they have to do to engineer those immediately. So I certainly apologize if I used the wrong street. I believe Duncan Steps is another challenge we have.
They're not the same steps. So I'm in an awkward position. I'm fully intending to vote no on this bill. But if you'd like me to offer the amendment to change it from Duncan Street to critical steps or to 57th Street steps, I'm happy to do so.
Or certainly another member. I just know I can't do that.
All right, you can't, you used to be, but you can't now.
Cannot.
So I will motion to amend attachments Exhibit A, version 2 draft of 2021-1652, line 50 to say 57th Street steps.
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amended bill has been amended.
Thank
Councilwoman
you.
Gross, you still have.
I do
have
still
the
have the floor, but I will stop now. Appreciate it. I'll save my questions for
All
another day. When we have the transfers, I'll have more questions.
Any further discussion on the bill to be amended? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
2 in opposition. The bill is amended. Any discussion on the bill as amended? If not, I do want to say at least one thing, because I did sit and listen to all the speakers who spoke both on Saturday and on Monday evening. But I also took umbrage with some of the remarks, because some of the remarks around lack of public engagement makes the assumption that I haven't been doing my job all year long. The reality is, as a council person, and I believe this is true for most council members, but speaking for myself, the reality is all year long, I attend meetings. I attend meetings hosted by CDCs. I attend meetings hosted by community groups. I attend meetings when residents and homeowners say, hey, we need to talk to you about issue A, B, or C. And all year long, I then receive that feedback, listen to their concerns, and when it comes time to budget, I then budget based upon those concerns that I've listened to and heard all year long. And even after I think it was about 4 months ago, when President Biden announced the ARP funding, even then, CDCs, community organizations, advocacy groups reached out to me and said, hey, look, the city's going to be getting this money. Here's what we would actually like to see as a part of that. Even some of the speakers who spoke on Saturday and on Monday called me directly. I had conversations with them about how to utilize this money. And so to then come on and say we haven't had public engagement when they have actually spoken to me directly is disingenuous at best, at worst, actually. And so I do need to state that for most of us, the budget doesn't just start the minute a mayor introduces a budget or proposes a budget. That's a year-long process of us listening, of us understanding, which is why, and I'll speak up for Councilman Wilson, which is why the Davis Avenue Bridge gets put into this bill, because it's something that he's heard about for a long period of time, which is why for many of us, the capital projects that got into this bill are in there because we've heard from our constituents over a very long period of time that this is what's actually necessary, which is why we then budget based upon the way we do. So I just felt the need to say that. With that being said, I also have heard, I see you, Councilman, I also have heard some other suggestions of how we still can do this better. And I specifically want to acknowledge Councilwoman Strasburger, who has had a number of conversations with me about how we actually can still do a better process of ensuring that we hear from as many people as possible. And so and to her credit, she's been working on a system to do that better. And I look forward to supporting her on how we can do a better budgetary process. But to what Councilman Gross just illuminated, what Chief Gilman sort of stated, it also needs reiterated that this is step one in the process. We have to have many more public conversations. We have to, over a long period of time, continue to engage the public over what this looks like and how we actually spend these dollars. This is not the end all be all. This is really step one. Two, it also needs acknowledged that these dollars, we need to start this process now. We've heard time and time again, we heard over the course of the last year and a half, how we need to address the needs of our constituents, which is why for me, it is important to begin moving this forward now. Lastly, what I also just want to say is Allegheny County also received ARP funding. Allegheny County has over $380 million that they received, much of which people have come to city council asking us to spend money on is literally the responsibility of Allegheny County. They could absolutely, in a heartbeat, take $10 million to put towards the food initiatives that many have come to council and spoke about. I also like what they have spoken about, and I'm interested in figuring out how council can support it. But Allegheny County has over $380 million that they could allocate to money, many of which is people have come to city council asking for. People have come to city council asking us to support the Port Authority. That is not our job. It is not our responsibility. We have no say-so over that. Allegheny County does, and they also have the resources to do something about it. So I just want to encourage all who came before and spoke before us to also go before the body that has a responsibility to address those issues that also has funding available. With that, I'm done. I did see Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think you spoke eloquently about the view that I take as well. I didn't want to let the moment pass on, the vote to comment on the current budget that we see in front of us as we reopen this this budget 2021 and allocate these ARP, and that it is the start of putting it in these different buckets and moving forward with continuing the public process. And I echo your comments of, as I represent, 14 neighborhoods, different, each one of them have their own community group, meetings, and we, my office have implemented a strategy to engage each community group in a fashion where we try to, let people understand what can be asked for in the budget, or what we can put in the budget, what we can't, and how we can, really insert those items in there for the future. And there was a moment on Facebook that happened that I thought really tells the story of why I think it's pressing to start putting money in these. And I may meander through the spreadsheet that I'm looking at of the different line item allocations to talk about some of these projects. But I want to specifically talk about a post that I was engaged with where, it was about the Davis Avenue Bridge. Someone said, why would we spend, money on a Davis Avenue Bridge, which would be a bike pedestrian bridge, before we fix the Swindell Bridge, which is the connector from Northview Heights to Perry Hilltop. Quite simply, we do have it funded. We do have the Swindell Bridge funded. That's in a prior allocation. And the reality is that we're waiting. It takes some time for design. It takes some time. It takes 2 years to fully get that contractor, through the RFP or to pick a contractor through the RFP process, and to get moving on a large structure like that. So as I see items in the budget that require that process, we put ourselves at risk if we don't make these fiscal decisions now for these items. Specifically for that, for bridges like that, and all of our other infrastructure that we should be taking care of, so that residents, have the basic need of utilizing these, something like a bridge. So that said, we still have to authorize the contracts. We still have to, continually every Wednesday we come to standing committee to talk about these items that were placed in the budget. We will have a different administration moving forward. It's been expressed time and time again that it is every right of the next administration to change allocations or to suggest allocations and put it before council to make those decisions. And I welcome that conversation, and I've expressed that to others as well. So, my comments about that is just so we move forward. We put this in a 4-year plan, but under the ordinance, we're expected to put it into a 5-year plan, and this effectively does that. And I want to go through a few projects and highlight a few projects that I believe are essential to my district and the city of Pittsburgh. Specifically, obviously, saving the employment of workers here. That's an immediate need. The wage increase. But specifically, there's a program that I've been talking about recently, the AHN Urban Poverty and Outreach program, that specifically tries to address a gap in how we talk about and also fill the need of addressing people that are experiencing homelessness and also people that are experiencing substance use disorder. So, but it shouldn't go unnoticed that it says urban poverty, because this was started because of the pandemic. This was a pilot program, and this was specifically started to address evictions, the evictions that we knew that were coming. And this entity works closely with that. It was a pilot program that under this administration started, and they've expanded to do more. Right now they're in 3 zones, in my zone 1, and they're gonna, under this allocation, they expand to all zones. So I can't in good faith not vote for this budget because of and these allocations, because I need this to move forward to help the most vulnerable. This also, I believe addresses some of the need to invest in our communities. Each individual council district will either receive or rehabilitate or do a full rehab to the rec centers, the community rec centers in the neighborhoods. We've been called on and listened to invest in our communities and to have a fully functional recreation center in each of the council district is essential for the public and for our minority population. In my district specifically, we obviously have the Davis Avenue Bridge, which has been 10 years in the making. Capital dollars from grant money from the state, and now we're going to fill that and complete that with this allocation from the city. And we also have streetscapes, for North Avenue. This is really the middle between the Mexican War Streets, the hospital, Manchester, between that and the park. And to really upgrade that will be essential for our infrastructure. I'm looking at a lot of line items here for housing, and to say that, these items that will be going to the URA for housing is not doing justice for people who, would require assistance. It's hard pressing to find, with the additional 7 million that recently came out for rental assistance, and we continue to provide rental assistance through the Housing Opportunity Fund. There is a good conversation to continue, which circles around the Section 8 voucher, the housing choice voucher that we have underutilized in the city of Pittsburgh, and we need to continue. We have, basically we have the funding from the federal government to, distribute the voucher in a way, but the housing needs and the rehabs that are required for the owners of these properties, and to actually work with community groups to fix up the properties so that they can actually pass the inspection so that an individual could use the voucher. I'm in full support of moving forward with programs, working with the HACP to increase the amount to increase the ability for the city of Pittsburgh to utilize these vouchers and to help renters. I see the land bank here. The land bank, I can't have it go unnoticed that the land bank I'm looking at $3, $6, $10 million in the land bank over the course of the next few years. This is an entity that has not been funded. It's been, basically criticized, and so far it just hasn't had the funding. And now we can really implement this and do it in a public way. Those meetings are public, and we should engage the public in a way where they know what the money is being spent on. I also see that there is money going towards the land trust. To fully fund some of these land trust projects is essential. I have two neighborhoods one that is working with the land trust already, and to continually invest in this administration, this council. This would be the first time that the city of Pittsburgh does this, and I think it's essential to long-term affordability. And I'm pleased to see that this investment is being made. So with that said, thank you for entertaining my meandering of each some of the lines that I wanted to highlight, but I just didn't want the moment to pass without making comment as to how I believe in in most of these allocations that I'm extremely familiar with, I support, and I believe that we need to move forward with this, and looking forward to the final vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Councilman Coghill, and then Councilwoman Strasburger, and then President Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Lavelle. And I really just wanted to remark on your comments that you had made a little bit, and I feel quite the same way. Through the 2 public meetings that we've had, I don't believe there was one caller from my district. And again, I appreciate their calls. I appreciate their concerns. I like hearing about, different issues from different parts of the city. But I will tell you, I get my direction every day. And in the way of when I'm out there, people tell me what they want us to invest in. For me, for the 4th district, I'd say the dominant thing is infrastructure, infrastructure, along with, paving, and that is part of infrastructure, paving and demolition, quite frankly. So I just want the callers to understand, that when we make these decisions, we have to think about our own districts. And for me, my district, I don't get the calls that were coming in as frequent or as much as they were in the last 2 public hearings that we've had. I get a whole other set of calls. And I think Chief Gilman can attest to the fact that, I relate to him almost on a daily basis as to what my district feels they need monies to go into. And, I want to thank Chief Gilman. He's been pretty good, and this administration has been good at fulfilling those needs. So, not to take anything away from the callers, I do appreciate them calling in. I do really like to hear about citywide issues and what's happening in other districts. But I feel like us as council members really have a feel for what we need in our own districts, most importantly. And, I'll continue to fight for that. But I do agree with a lot of their suggestions, and we'll have those talks ongoing. So that's it. Thanks.
Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really just wanted to take a moment to speak to why I voted no on all these 4 bills for the reopening of the 2021 budget and the ARPA spending, because I didn't speak at the time when I was taking the votes, casting the votes. I'm really focused on process, not as much content, because I think that the allocations are, I agree with almost all of them. Maybe, there are some differences of opinion here and there, but it's pretty good. It's a good start. That said, I also hear what other members have spoken about, and I don't disagree that we as council members do public engagement 365 days a year. We absolutely do. We're in touch with what our needs for our districts are. But that being said, there's a difference between knowing what the needs are in a district and getting to the end goal and allocating that money for it, and making people's voices heard throughout a process. Even if we know what a certain project is that needs to be funded or needs to be prioritized, I don't think that the 2 are mutually exclusive. I think there still is room for public process in that, and that the process that we took here, there was some public process. We had a post agenda, we had 2 Zoom meetings, and I understand that there's an intention now to go out and connect to communities and have a much more robust public process. And I think that's great, because I think it's necessary. We've heard from the public that they do want that. Even though a lot of what's in this allocation is good, they want to be able to have their voices heard. I think that we're also in a moment right now, a moment in history where it's the expectations from the public as to how much transparency there is and how much voice that they get in this is changing. And it's up to us to keep up with that change. And I don't think that I understand there's urgency to many of these line items, and I don't want to threaten those. I also think that taking a vote today and then doing public engagement is disingenuous. It's not actually listening, making people feel as if they're heard. Making people feel that they're heard is doing public engagement before the vote, even understanding that we can reopen these line items after the fact. It's making people feel as if they're heard and actually listening to them. And if at the end of the day there are policy differences, then that's understandable. But to take the vote before actually doing the engagement doesn't make sense to me. I do feel as if we could hold it a few weeks until after recess, do public engagement for 4 or 5 weeks, and then take the vote. So that is why I voted no. It's not against necessarily the content of the package. It's about the process. I also think that while we each know what our own district needs are, we at a certain level, we have to be balancing what our district's needs are with the city's needs. And those are sometimes a little bit different. So I think that this bill does that to a certain degree, but when it comes to public process, we do have to be aware of that balance and that tension there, and not always only be thinking about our own districts, as tough as that might be for individual district or council members. I just think that there's a whole opportunity to completely reimagine what our ongoing and kind of iterative process around the budget looks like. I do look forward to, I had a great conversation with Councilman Lavelle last night. I do look forward to helping to reimagine that and try different methods and ways of educating people, and not just taking in information, but also reporting back out to the community as to how their comments influenced our decision, and showing different metrics of how their engagement influenced the budget. I think that's also really important too. So there's a lot of work to be done. We do public engagement down now in the process, but I think there's even more that we can do. I'm looking forward to that. But to be able to stick to what I believe is really important as part of public process, I did have to vote no today. So I just wanted to explain that to my fellow council members and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Council President Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Lavelle, for chairing these meetings and for this, going through this and working so hard on this entire process. I'm going to first commend you for the work that you've been doing. You and Reverend Burgess, and working with the administration, have come up with a lot of great things. I've heard so much here, and I heard the comments, and I do want to first say that Councilwoman Strasburger has been very clear that she wants a more public process, and I've also made it clear that we've had very short time, and even though we have vacation, I was willing to cancel our vacation if that meant working through it to get to some solutions. But I will say this: I don't think anything was going to change. I think it's disingenuous to pretend that we were going to change something just because we had more meetings or because we delayed it a little bit longer. I think we all had an opportunity to have input. I think the administration reached out and sent this, so that we could have this, take this time and put, and I know, I see Councilwoman Gross shaking her head no, that she just got the amendments today, and I do understand that, but they were sent last night, and our clerk's office received them last night. But they received them probably while they were sleeping. So they just got to council today. But there's been an opportunity to, if you wanted to put an amendment forward, you could have done so. Anybody could have done so. So if there was something you wanted to see, like Councilwoman Strasburger, even though she's not voting for it, did put some amendments forward for the lead paint. So I do want to say that, I mean, there's opportunity, and there's still opportunity. So I just want to make sure people understand that there's still opportunity, and we can still do what we have to do. If there's changes we want to see, if there's a new administration with different, if the new administration has different ideas, whomever that next mayor may be, we're willing to work and talk with whatever it is. But I also want to acknowledge that for the years that PWSA has the increase, that's partly due to the lead line or the lead paint project, and also Councilman Coghill and myself also requested demo, and I don't know that Councilman Coghill and Councilman Kraus also requested demo, and I don't know that that was acknowledged, that they were also part of that amendment, and the reason why there's some changes there. So I do want to give them and myself a little bit, to let people know that we made sure that demo was a priority in some of our districts. Even though we do a combination of renovations, we also do demos. But I don't represent an area that that is not in need. So for me, I have to vote for the things that are important to my district. I do represent people that are struggling. I know that some of you do not, and you have the luxury of voting no. I don't always have the luxury of voting no for some things. So for me, Avenues of Hope is important. The Stevens School Building in Elliott is important. But the Jasmine Nyree campus that the Porters purchased in Sheridan is so important to that entire community and the services that they will be providing. It's important to domestic violence survivors because they're going to open a domestic violence house. It's important to people with disabilities because they're going to open a living space for people who age out of the system with autism or any type of special needs. They're opening they have our employment center there. They're opening a health clinic for the community. So the list goes on. It is so all encompassing of social services that are needed in our area. When we talk about the county delivering social services and the money that they received, we also have to keep in mind they also received $2 billion for social services. So when people come to us and they want some things, I understand that and I want to help. And I am going to probably still put some amendments forward. And I do understand the needs for the food. And I'm not only part of the Food Policy Council, I became part of it because I actually did distributions in my own area. My brother volunteers in Councilwoman Gross's area at the Lawrenceville Food Pantry. And so I do know the need across the city for the food, for the assistance for the food, for the hunger groups. But I don't know that I've even heard from the food bank during this whole process, but I do know that we heard some from some groups. And I understand and value that we have to do more. And I actually think the community gardens is the way to go more than anything, so that people aren't reliant upon government for their food, which is why I did do the legislation. But I also think that we need to put some money into that program. But having said that, I can't, if my district could afford to wait for some of these things, then I would, play the game too and pretend we were doing all these things that we really had no intentions of doing anything different, but just making it look like we were doing something different. I also don't want to pretend that either, because for me, I think it was really important to make sure that we started delivering services to people that have been waiting. And like Councilman Lavelle said, we're all in our districts. We all work so hard getting out there and working. And that's why some council members differ. Sometimes our opinions are different because they do represent some different opinions and different constituency with different needs. So just because somebody's not struggling in one area doesn't mean that they don't have a need in another. And so we're trying to all address what's best for our constituents and the city of Pittsburgh as a whole. But with that being said, I just want to thank the administration. I really want to thank Dan Gilman. Dan, I know that your mother and your family is going through a lot right now with her first chemo treatment today, and I know that there's a lot you're going through, but I appreciate that you took time here. I appreciate Kevin Paulus, our budget office, and our clerk's office, and our sergeant at arms and IMP, all who helped us get meetings together on the weekends and in the evenings and on unusual hours. So I think even though we didn't have a lot of meetings, we had meetings that we tried to make sure we reached the public in the most convenient times for them, even though it may not have been easy to get everyone together. It was what we felt like we should do for the public. And I think we are definitely, and I would just say this, we are definitely going to go out and hear from the public. We are definitely having conversations. And I really want to start in areas where people may differ from our opinions or may have something different. So we'll probably start in over in the East End somewhere, and a couple of the meetings. I'll get the schedule up before next week. We'll have a schedule, and any members that want to join us for conversations with the community, not just public hearings, not just post agendas, but an actual conversation. I want to say that we'll be ready to have that. But I also want to put together, and Dan Gilman and I had spoken about this, I'd like to put something together for the nonprofits, because I do think we have so many nonprofits doing amazing work in the city, and we could not have gotten through the pandemic had it not been for some of the businesses and the nonprofits that stepped up and helped us. But having said that, as Councilwoman Gross said, she started looking into 990s for federal documents. I do that all the time. I look through 990s through nonprofits. Kim in my office was an auditor. Lori in my office is an accountant. So between them, they are really good at going through 990s and seeing what organizations are actually doing work, what organizations are actually just collecting funds, and who's actually who might actually represent an organization that we need to fund because they may need more help. So we're going to go through those, and I think that should be part of the process. However we distribute funds, it should not go directly to the organization. There should be somebody who goes through an audit. They should go through make sure their federal 990s are submitted on time, because if they're not submitted on time, that's a red flag. That was at least given to us by the Forbes Fund. That's one of the red flags you can tell, but nonprofits not doing what they should be doing or not doing or not fiscally responsible, they might file their 990s late with the federal government. And so I think they need to go through 990s. I think they need to go through an audit, but I think they need to give us some proof that they did something they actually helped people that they give us a list of who they've helped or some kind of documentation that they've actually helped people, that we can maybe, okay, you really were beneficial to us and we really want to thank you for that. And here's what we've come up with. So I think that's part of the further conversation that we're going to have, and probably an amendment that we'll see, or we'll decide how that funding will be established through the budget process at all. So with that said, I do want to thank everyone. I want to thank and acknowledge that there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes and with people doing things, and that people are hearing from the public. They are meeting with their constituency. They always meet with their constituency. Councils, many of us take calls or emails or see people out in the community on a regular basis. And I think all of us work really hard, even though we may see things differently. I think we'll always do what we think is best for the residents of the city of Pittsburgh. And that's what we're elected to do. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just take a moment to recognize my fellow colleagues, my members, or our members that have worked so very diligently through this process. I hope our residents and our constituency realizes what a great council this is, and the differences in opinions and approaches only make us stronger. The discussions that we have, and the tay-to-tay and the give and take and the back and forth is really what our charge is to do here as advocates for city residents and for our constituency. And so I would just like to share, I'm very proud of this moment. I know how difficult the struggle has been for all of us, not just to determine the allocations of these funds, but how well this council stepped up during the pandemic in every challenge that we struggled to meet, and did our very best to be our very best and to do the work that we were charged to do by coming here. And so it's a pretty monumental moment to recognize the funds, to distribute, or at least begin the process of preliminary distribution of these funds. And it is a culmination of a tremendous amount of work. And I just want to say that how proud I am to serve with each and every one of you, and the seriousness by which you take your charge and work so very hard for the residents of the city. And I will be casting my vote in the affirmative for the passage of these bills today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members?
Chair, if I might briefly.
Councilwoman.
Promise. So I just wanted to summarize also that I believe there's no reason for us to vote on a 4-year allocation today. In fact, I think there is very good reason for us to not vote on a 4-year allocation today. As Councilwoman Strasburg and others in a public testimony have pointed out, it makes our citizens feel that they have not had a voice. It is not for us to tell them how they feel. They feel they have not had adequate input. They feel that there has not been enough time to even process and make a judgment on whether these allocations do satisfy the needs that exist today, and that this $335 million pot of money is meant to address. And when we slow the process down, we give people that time to have discussion, to have input, and to feel that they've had time to make that judgment. Other cities are not doing it this way. There is zero reason in the ARPA legislation to do it this way. In fact, the actual federal legislation calls explicitly for public input, and we will be judged on whether or not we have had adequate input. So I urge us to not vote for the 4-year allocation today, and I urge us to continue having public input on whether or not the allocations of these funds are addressing our citizens' needs. Also, it would be very easy for us today, but I see that there is no will, to just pass the immediate needs and the operating funds, which other cities have done. And so that could mean just voting on the top portion of the spreadsheet in all years, because our operating budget just requires us to just show a 5-year impact, and that's why those columns are there in the out years. Or we could just vote on, honestly, for the rest of the spreadsheet, just on the 2021 allocations. And I will say it once and I'll say it again. Since there has to be a greater process, there's absolutely no reason to vote, especially on the transfers to other entities. We don't need to take this vote today on those items. And so I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Any other members? Second,
Hey.
Councilman Coghill, second round.
Okay, thank you. I failed to mention before, I first wanted to thank Councilwoman Kale-Smith and Councilwoman Gross for fighting for those pools to get open and get the lifeguards out there. Again, our lives centered around it as children. So moving forward this year, this year is going to be tough, obviously, in many ways, and pools are going to be one of them. However, next year I'm committed to, and myself and the rest of the Parks Task Force, I hope to, redo all our pools and make these first-class facilities. This is a very important amenity, I think, for the city of Pittsburgh. We lost so many years ago, and I hope to refurbish the ones that need help, and I think that's most of them. On the bills today, I just wanted to state, I personally try to support the broad vision of the mayor, okay, whether it's their initiatives citywide or, whatever they might be. That being said, I don't always agree with, the initiatives. In fact, many times I find myself at odds, but I do believe the mayor has a right to make his initiatives and his allocations as he would like. That being said, I'll be the first one at the table for the next administration if they wish to make changes, whatever they may be, providing that, I guess, the majority of council would approve. I'm open to any and all changes that a next administration might offer up. So I'll be voting yes today, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, second round? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
2 in opposition. Bill 1652 receives affirmative recommendation. Thank you all. That moves us to our new papers, still under finance and law. First paper being 1674.
Bill 1674, resolution authorizing the issuing of a warrant in favor of Joseph and Marcella Parham in the amount of $37,703 in settlement of a claim for damage to their residence at 6 Milroy Street from a city police vehicle on February 10, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Sorry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1678.
Bill 1678, resolution amending Resolution 865 entitled Authorize the Mayor and Director of Finance on behalf of the city to enter into an amendment to parking agreement to amend existing designated meter revenue and corporation agreements between the city and the Pittsburgh Public Parking Authority for the purpose of dedicating revenue generated by increased parking meter rates to the city and to further document updates to the Parking Court Corporation Agreement, the Mellon Square Garage lease, and the Monongahela Wharf lease, to authorize a second amendment to parking agreement to further amend the corporation agreement and the Monongahela Wharf lease between the city and the Pittsburgh Public Parking Authority, and to amend certain other terms of the amendment to parking agreements.
Motion to hold 1 week.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill will be held 1 week. That moves us to our invoices. Need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
So
So
moved.
move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Works Committee chaired by Councilman Coghill. First supplemental paper, Bill 1685.
Bill 1685, resolution further amending and supplementing resolution number 316 entitled Resolution Providing for a Contract or Agreement for the preliminary design and final design services during construction and miscellaneous services for traffic signal installation of the South Side Signals Project and providing for the payment of costs thereof not to exceed $390,213.38, which was amended by Resolution 229 to authorize a new total project cost up to, but not to exceed $536,000 to be further amended with this resolution to account for an increase in the project cost for the services during construction phase up to, but not to exceed $701,915.05.
Motion to approve.
A second, very brief discussion.
Councilman Kraus.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, may we also have 1686 and Councilman Coghill, if you're okay with that, they're companion bills?
Yes.
Bill 1686, resolution providing for an agreement with the Larson Design for contract administration and construction inspection service costs associated with the South Side Signals and providing for the payment of costs not to exceed $514,472.57.
Motion to approve.
Second, very brief discussion.
Councilman.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Just want to recognize my colleagues and thank you for your consideration and cooperation in moving these two bills. We had some bills last week as well too that you had assisted me with moving. This is the Southside Signal Project, which is 18th Street, which will create new intersections and new traffic signals at Sarah Jane, a new signal at Josephine Street, Mission Street, Arlington Avenue, and Amanda. It is largely federal and PennDOT dollars, but there is a small local match, which this council passed probably even as long as 3 years ago. So this has been in the works for quite some time. It will go out for bid very soon. And we believe that construction can begin in early spring of 2022. So it's just a really exciting time for this project. And I really appreciate my colleagues' support in moving these bills today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilman Coghill?
I just wanted to compliment Councilman Kraus with all the infrastructure that's going on, whether it's in the south side or up on the hill. I'm really impressed and quite jealous to some degree. Even though I do take credit for some of the credit for the public works division, but no, I just wanted to point out, it seems like every week something's going on there in the good and infrastructure way.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. The Carson Street project now from Smithfield to 33rd Street is about 10 years in the making. It's an $18 million project that's presently under construction now, and it's designed to improve safety on East Carson, regardless of whether it is vehicular, pedestrian, bike, or public transit. It's a massive, massive project underway now, and this will be sort of phase 2 of it, if you will, that will complete that second busiest street heading out of the south side, which is 18th Street. So thank you for your compliments, Councilman. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both bills are recommended. Bill 1708.
Bill 1708, resolution approving the recommendation made by the Director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure that Sea-Rise Place be paved with asphalt in accordance with section 41706 of the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Takes us to our deferred paper, Bill 1648.
Bill 1648, resolution amending resolution number 721 entitled Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and the directors of the Department of Parks and the Department of Public Works to enter into a lease agreement with the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater for a portion of real property located on Liberty Avenue between 29th and 30th Street, to include the proposed lease for approval by a majority vote of City Council before the final execution between the mayor and directors of Park and Rec and Department of Public Works and the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater as required by the original 2019 resolution.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, I'll just, may I? I'll just say thank you for allowing the 1 week hold, Councilman Coghill, and I was able to talk to the ballet. And members will see that the lease is attached to the bill, which is actually what was requested the last time this topic was in front of us, that we'd be able to kind of see the lease at the time of voting and not just authorize a lease agreement. So it's here, it's in the public record. I was able to look at it and go over it with the ballet and make sure that it's been a long-term conversation, but it's important because I think this is a 30-year lease. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just remind members that this is Denny Park on Liberty Avenue in the Strip, which was bequeathed to the city by the family of Ebenezer Denny, the city of Pittsburgh's first mayor. So it has historic import. It's a very underutilized and under-improved, very small park, and has been mostly leased to the ballet. Half of the block is leased to the ballet just for parking. And that would continue under this lease, sadly. But just wanted to note that for historic sake. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Under new papers, Bill 1666.
Bill 1666, resolution granting unto CPZ, their successors, and assign the privilege and license to construct, maintain, and use at their own cost and expense to install a set of entry stairs and landing at Arler Way in the rear of 1004 Constant Street, number 200 in the 23rd Ward, 1st Council District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1667.
Bill 1667, resolution granting unto Flats on Forward LP, their successors, and assigns the privilege and license to construct, maintain, and use at their own cost and expense to construct 4 bays that will contain 43 housing units at 5824 Forward Avenue in the 14th Ward, 5th Council District.
Motion to approve.
Need a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1668.
Bill 1668, resolution granting unto Joe Kunzier, their successors, and assigns the privilege and license to construct, maintain, and use at their own cost and expense a new set of concrete entry steps, landing, and a railing at 4726 and 4728 Hatfield Street in the 9th Ward, 7th Council District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1669.
Bill 1669, resolution approving the recommendation made by the Director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure that Royal Lake Way be paved with asphalt in accordance with Section 41706 of the Code of Ordinances.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1670.
Bill 1670, resolution amending Resolution 375 entitled Resolution Providing for an Amended Reimbursement Agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary engineering phase of the Smithfield Street Reconstruction Project and providing for the payment of municipal incurred costs not to exceed $800,000 and the previously authorized municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs not to exceed $5,000 to increase the total not to exceed amount to $9,080,000 for the addition of the final design, utility work, right-of-way, and construction phases to the project, federally reimbursable at 80%, and the municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs not to exceed $47,000, an increase of $42,000.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1671.
Bill 1671, resolution granting unto McKell Khalid, their successors, and assigns the privilege and license to reconstruct, maintain, and use at their own cost and expense an existing concrete ADA ramp and pad at Forbes Avenue entrance, a concrete plinth along the foundation of the existing building and first level facade that extends into the right of way at 3721 Forbes Avenue in the 4th Ward, 3rd Council District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. Bill 1672.
Bill 1672, resolution amending resolution number 307, granting the Urban Pittsburgh Downtown Hotel Company their successors and assigns the privilege and license to construct, maintain, and use at their own cost and expense a generator exhaust pipe and 2 new projecting signs at 405 Wood Street in the 1st Ward, 6th Council District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That takes us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilman Wilson. One new paper, Bill 1676.
Bill 1676, resolution authorizing the mayor and Department of Permits, licenses, and inspections to enter into a single source agreement with Construction Junction for a 1-year pilot program to perform deconstruction services in conjunction with demolitions of city-owned condemned structures.
Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Second.
Councilman.
Chair, I'd like to ask Director Kinter to, okay. Hi, Director. Good afternoon. Wanted to just be able to highlight what's going on here. Also ask some questions. So this is a pilot program with Construction Junction where I believe we're, is this going to coincide with demolition, or is this going to be even structures that, I'll just let you explain. Thanks.
Sure. So deconstruction is a demolition process where you take out elements of a structure in the opposite order that they were installed. So for example, you would remove bathroom fixtures, cabinetry, tiling, demolish wall enclosures with the intent of removing framing elements for reuse. So considering the cost of construction materials these days, that could potentially be profitable. We hope to use this pilot to assess the cost of deconstruction, and there are, we believe, a potential increase in cost when it comes to labor associated with deconstruction. You're not demolishing with traditional machinery. Contractors are doing more labor-intensive work to hand demolish so that you can save those elements. But there's also a decrease in cost in terms of items going to the landfill. And of course, this program is important for reducing waste that would otherwise go to the landfill. And so, you know, we're using this pilot program to work with an expert, Construction Junction, to fulfill reporting requirements and really get an understanding of how this can work when we demolish a structure that's eligible for deconstruction.
Yeah, could you explain the process of how you'll select a structure?
Yeah, so that's actually part of this pilot program. Not every structure is eligible for deconstruction. Not all structures have useful materials left inside. And even structures that may appear to have useful materials like brick, there's different qualities of brick. So we're working with Construction Junction to help build a checklist that would be integrated into our condemned building reviews that would help inspectors identify elements of a structure that would be appropriately reused. And as those condemned buildings come, up for demolition, we would do a deconstruction approach with our already pre-qualified demolition contractors to divert those materials into dumpsters that would then be taken to facilities that could reuse the materials.
Okay, do you view this, or in this plan, like I'm envisioning, if there was one house that had a lot of items in it, you would go after that. But if there was one, let's say there was only one wooden floor, tongue and groove, that we could still save in the structure, would you go out for just one floor and do this? Or, are we trying to do the whole, like, as much as we can in one structure, or are we gonna individually look at each of them and go, okay, there's a floor here, and we'll send, just for that one item?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, our interest is to select structures that have the most amount of elements that are worth saving. In addition, our ability to inspect the interior of structures is pretty limited. So we're really taking a look at the exterior and saying, what do we know about the history of this, when it was built, what kind of exterior masonry it has that we would want to take. And then, try to discern some maybe additional structural elements that we'd want to get as well. But we likely in this pilot wouldn't be trying to identify, objects that were maybe that small.
Okay. All right. And this would just pertain to demo that will be under CDBG and not pay-go for emergency.
Correct. This would only be eligible for structures that went through an asbestos survey and are on the CDBG demolition list.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councilman Cargill.
Thank you. And thank you for being here, Director Kinter. And thank you for, continual discussions with me about, privately owned condemned buildings as well as, city structures. Seems to me, I have more privately owned that are just in a wasteland and people have not tended to them for 10, 15 years. I love the idea, especially with the price of lumber, aluminum, steel, repurposing a lot of this, because even a building in its worst condition falling down, typically there's still a lot that can be salvaged there. I do it myself in many ways, but let me just get this straight though. So Construction Junction will get these, materials that we deem still reusable. Do they pay us for that?
So under this current agreement, there is no revenue that would be generated from Construction Junction. Instead, they would be providing all the sort of basics that we need to do this in a different way after the pilot. So we've never done deconstruction in this manner. So our hope is that we learn a lot and can adopt a procurement process or go through a procurement process to get vendors to be part of deconstruction in the future, where the city would receive revenues for materials that were resold. So that is a long-term goal. In the short term, we need to have a better understanding of this process. And we're also relying on Construction Junction to, provide the city with reports on the materials saved and reused, the amounts of those, tracking those in terms of revenue generated, if any, and dealing with the process of salvaging. A lot of these items, after they're diverted into a dumpster, then need to be cleaned and sorted. So sort of doing all the manual labor that's attached to that, and calculating that sort of the life cycle of those materials, so we have an idea of the use of the program.
Right. So I guess what I'm getting at is we are paying, we're going to be paying somebody to deconstruct these homes, and that will be labor intensive, much more so than taking a wrecking ball to it. Construction Junction is going to come and take what they feel they can salvage, but they're not going to pay us.
Right. So at this time, and just to talk a little bit about what that process is going to look like initially, we already have pre-qualified demolition contractors that have appropriate licensure that perform demolitions on behalf of the city or for the city. So we would be using those pre-qualified vendors to simply divert materials that can actually be reused into dumpsters supplied by Construction Junction for them to then take, sort, clean, process, etc., and do the labor that's required with that. I think that there are revenues that can be gained in the future from these materials, but there's also costs associated with doing deconstruction and processing those materials and cleaning them and appropriately getting them into the pipeline for resale. So I think while Construction Junction is not paying us for those materials, we're not paying Construction Junction for that work scope.
But it is costing us on the labor end when we hire the people to come in and deconstruct. It's going to take longer and it's going to be more labor intensive. But I'm okay with that. I like seeing, the material, reused in an appropriate manner. But let me just ask you this, just out of curiosity. So a lot of these older places have copper flashings, copper pipes, in some cases, thousands of dollars in scrap metal. What happens to the scrap metal?
Yeah, so Construction Junction does have vendors and partners that they work with to clean materials and put them in reuse. But the purpose of this program is to keep construction items out of the landfill and back into productive use. So what would happen to them? They would be resold, they'd be reused in some other development or construction that's happening, hopefully in the city.
But like the scrap metal director, is that if we so choose to, take it to the recycling places, Castriota or wherever place we pick, or does Construction Junction are we giving them the scrap?
In this pilot, we're giving Construction Junction this scrap and materials that they identify.
Right. So it's really profitable. It can be profitable for them. I mean, because they're going to resell it, right? I mean, the material, of course, they're going to scrap the metal, most of it, and they're going to resell the material. I've never shopped there, so I'm not sure if the prices are like really great or not, but I know one thing, I'll go anywhere for secondhand lumber right now. It is through the roof, so, and this lumber from these older homes are usually bigger, thicker, better lumber, so, okay, I guess I'll have some questions later, but you're doing a great job, Director. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say how enthusiastic I am for this program. I know it's a pilot, I know it's starting small, but it's one of those examples of a program that it looks small on the outside, but so much, I saw the behind the scenes happen and so much went into it and so much kind of holistic thinking around all the partners and all the different entities of the city that have to be a part of this process. It really is, it was a lot of cutting through red tape from my understanding to get to this point today. So I want to give credit to Director Kinter, Alicia Carberry, Hirsch Merenstein, who I know worked on it, and I'm sure many others I'm missing who, were, because of my interest in the circular economy and keeping things out of landfills and also the lead demolition issues that we want to try to avoid, for lead paint homes, briefed me on this. And I'm very enthusiastic about this, seeing the metrics that come out of it and seeing how we can scale it up in the future with more funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any Councilwoman Gross and then Councilman Kraus?
Thank you. So Director, I didn't hear, but I might have missed what the kind of current demolition costs are. And we're talking about this is just the city doing a demolition, not someone pulling their own demolition permit and pulling down a building that they own, which I think we've seen too much of, but that's a different topic. And so this is just when the city is taking down one of its own structures, right? Okay, so yes. And then, so we know what the cost is that we've been paying for demolitions. We have an average cost per structure, per like a single family structure.
Yeah, Yes, thanks for bringing it up. Just to make sure everyone's on the same page. This pilot would only be the demolition of city-owned structures. So it's a pretty narrow pilot, and the average cost thereabouts is about 45 to 50K to do a demolition on a single family structure.
And then the deconstruction by comparison is?
We don't know. So that's part of the pilot.
We're guessing it's more.
My guess is it's going to be more because of the labor intensiveness, and that the offset of less materials going into landfill won't exactly equal the additional cost of the labor, is my guess.
Well, there are benefits, right? There are definitely benefits, and I am also supportive of those benefits. But I think I said this before, but I want to repeat, is how many, this is the question first, how many properties are city-owned and condemned right now? I think you've told us that before. 300? 300. Wouldn't it be great if no new city-owned structures are condemned? And just we could work that number down and we don't keep adding and bringing it back up. Wouldn't that be great?
I would absolutely support reducing the condemned property list. We have 1,900 condemned properties in the city of Pittsburgh, and PLI's role is to ensure that we're demolishing the unsafe structures on that list. A reduction of that and more properties back into productive use is absolutely something PLI supports.
Right. So I'm happy to support this. That's a big number. I don't think I'm going to do the math in my head. Is that like $1.5 million to take down all of, even at $50,000 a pop, all of 300 structures?
Not great at mental math, but I will say that not all city-owned condemned structures are
all over.
Yeah, eminently dangerous or sort of on the high end of the scoring spectrum. So I think that there are some that are potentially savable, potentially usable.
Great. I would love to be involved with conversations about how to secure more of the 300 currently condemned city-owned, so that they don't get to this place of needing to be taken down. And then also outside of the currently condemned 300, preventing even more, just starting with the city-owned structures that aren't condemned, preventing any of those from getting onto your list. So happy to vote on this today, but it would be, I think, much more cost effective to be able to prevent those structures from ever having to be deconstructed.
I think there are, potential stabilization efforts that could save a roof and then save a life of a structure for a period of time, but happy to talk with you about that. So
is that already a slogan I don't know about? Save a roof, save a life? save a roof, save a structure?
You just came up with it, yeah.
All right, you just came up with it. It's in the record. Thank you. That's all I have. That's all I have, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Coghill, I'm under the impression that some even use copper for downspouts. I'm not sure if you can verify that or not.
Only my really fancy customers.
Director, love the idea. I applaud you for your effort. I believe Alicia Carberry might have had a little bit to help in this as well. I want to recognize her, always sort of forward thinking, and I applaud you for the efforts here. Not every structure needs to have the wrecking ball come after it and just take it down in its totality. There, Councilwoman Gross, myself, many members of council are adamant about our passion about preservation, and it doesn't limit itself just to the exteriors of structures. Inside some of these homes are amazing product that absolutely deserves to be reclaimed and to be reused. And Councilman Coghill, again, if you ever want to go to Construction Junction, I'm telling you, you would be a kid at Kennywood. It is one of my most favorite field trips to take. You never ever know what you might just come across inside a construction junction. So it's a wonderful partnership. I'm happy that we are partnering with them. I understand a little bit of the additional expense. I think it more than balances itself out by our commitment to saving that is savable. And we should do that. And I hope to see this extended far beyond a one-year pilot. And if you need help doing that, please let us know. I certainly would be one in favor of supporting that. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Any other members?
I have things in my house from construction junction.
I do too. I mean, yeah.
Smith? You're on mute, Brett. There you go. President Smith?
Me? Okay, I couldn't hear who you called. I'm sorry. So I just want to thank you, Director Kinter, because demo is so important to the districts, at least of Councilman Coghill, Kraus, and myself. So much so that we advocated and held out for funding for demo for our districts, because we know that what you can do would be amazing. But you mentioned the cost being so tremendous. But I do want to acknowledge your work, and also Hirsch and Alicia, because they are really hard workers in the city of Pittsburgh who don't get a lot of recognition. So I just want to acknowledge their work and thank them. But I also want to mention that when we talk about, instead of demo as options to renovate homes instead of demolishing them, Richard Snipe at the URA at the Pennsylvania Housing Development Corporation, they're doing amazing work, and they're doing work, a combination. I mentioned we're doing a combination in our district of demo and renovations. He is doing a lot of work in Sheridan and Crafton Heights and Elliott and Chartier, just a lot of different neighborhoods. And he would do so much more had he had more money. So when we talk about allocating funding and to stop demo, we might want to see what we can do to help Richard Snipe at the PHDC. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? First round, second round, Councilman Coghill.
Okay, thank you. Director Kinter, oh, there you are. Okay. So I just want to make sure I heard this right. This is not, when you talk about construction junction coming in, repurposing these material, this is not condemned buildings. This is only privately owned city. This is only city buildings, not privately owned condemned buildings.
Condemned city-owned structures.
Gotcha. So can we not do that with condemned privately owned structures that need to come down?
So we wanted to really have a narrow pilot, because again, we think that there's revenues to be gained by doing this in a different way. So this is our sort of learning experience, and we made it narrow for that reason.
Okay, and maybe this is more a question for the land bank or where we go with that, but when we do demo a privately owned condemned building that's unsafe, do we then put a lien on the property to the money that we spent to demo it?
We do.
Okay, good. And I couldn't remember the slogan, the Councilwoman Gross's new slogan with the roof, but it all starts with the roof. All of these projects, and I'm for repurposing or saving projects that are not falling to pieces. But you put the roof on it, and that will save it for at least some years to come. But so it all starts with the roof, and I'm not just plugging it because I'm in the industry. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further members, second round? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That moves us to Urban Recreation Committee, chaired by Councilman Burgess. One deferred paper, Bill 1586.
Bill 1586, ordinance amending and supplementing the city code at Title 4, Public Places and Property, Article 11, Parks and Playgrounds, Permits and Fees, Section 47701, Park Permit Procedures, Section 47702, Fees for swimming pools, golf course, skating rinks, and other recreational facilities. so as to give priority to city residents for park facility rentals.
Motion to approve.
Second with discussion.
I'll defer.
Thank you, Reverend. I just want to say that we are working on this legislation with the law department. I think we should have something ready for next week, or at least when we return from break. So we are still working on it. It's almost complete. So I'd like to make a motion to hold for 2 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Will be held 2 weeks.
Thank you, Reverend.
That moves us to our last committee of the day, Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, which is chaired by Councilwoman Strasburger. We have one paper, Bill 1675.
Bill 1675, resolution amending resolution number 410, entitled Resolution Authorizing the Mayor and Director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into a contract or agreement with GBWH Pittsburgh LLC, New Horizons, to provide ITIL V4 Foundation to support ongoing development of innovation and performance staff who support critical IT infrastructure for a sum not to exceed $41,600, to authorize the mayor and director of the Department of Innovation and Performance to enter into an agreement or amendment with GBWH Pittsburgh LLC, New Horizons, to provide ITIL V4 Foundation to support ongoing development of additional innovation and performance staff who support critical IT infrastructure at an additional amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $71,600.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Bill is recommended. That does exhaust our agenda for today. We do have meeting announcements. This afternoon at 1:30, council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 1448 relative to the University of Pittsburgh Institutional Master Plan. Speaker registration closes this morning at 11:30 p.m. And this evening at 6 o'clock, council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 1135 relative to a state of educational emergency. Registration does close at 3 p.m. this afternoon to speak at that. Also, Tuesday, July 20th and Wednesday, July 21st, council will hold our regular and standing committee meetings at 10 a.m. Also, next Tuesday at 1:30 p.m., council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 1530 as it relates to zoning changes on Banksville Road, and registration will close at 11:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. To register for these meetings and any other public hearings, please fill out the sign-up form by the registration deadline on the council meeting webpage or call 412-255-2138. Is there any comments from members?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Burgess.
I'll be brief. I did not talk a lot about the budget bills because I was part of its creation. And so certainly I was going to be supportive. But I do want to say something that is not as well known. I want to thank certainly all members, but in particular, I want to thank our president, who has led us through this process with almost constant, sometimes hourly communication of helping us and leading us. Also, in Councilman Lavelle, in your role of finance chair, of actually shepherding line items through the budgetary process. The public does not know how intricately involved both of you were in the creation and the implementation of this of the spending plan for the ARP, and that we are proud of it, and we do believe it puts equity first. I do, lastly, I pledge to work with the president and to continue. I agree with Erica. I actually passed the legislation that called for more exposure to the capital budget back in the day. So I do believe in ongoing conversation. I do want to suggest, though, there are two things as we have this ongoing conversation. I think we should always have it, right? But I think there's two things the public should understand. I think one is public engagement means we listen, We communicate, we discuss, but the public must understand that the final decision is not the public's to make, it is council's to make. We represent individually 30,000 people every day at all times, and by group, we represent the entire city. And the buck stops here. Secondly, I want to suggest, I really want to have the engagement because this council will create the 2022 budget, at least, and the 2023 budget will lead in its creation and will lead in its distribution. And so we want to have certainly community engagement. We want to get all of their ideas, and there are a variety of levers that we can pull outside of the ARP money, from budget to the capital budget to foundation community to business community, to get some of their ideas funded. And so as we move forward with community engagement, I just hope that the public understands that our engagement is to listen, but that no one group represent the entire city the way we do. And at the end of the day, after we listen, and I say this in church, so I don't usually use a church analogy, but I will today. I've been a pastor of church for 37 years, same church. And I tell the members of the church, and we are Baptists, so we have a democratic process. At the end of the day, I do work for them, I do serve them, and they can make decisions, but they are not my boss. I answer to a higher power. And at the end of the day, I will do what I believe that power leads me to do. And so if I do that in church, I do that in all factors of my life. I'll listen, I'll negotiate, I'll do all that. But at the end of the day, I answer to a higher power, and I will do as that spirit leads me to do. So again, Madam President, I just want to thank you for leadership, and thank you for the opportunity in a very small way to serve you and to serve this city. And again, as Councilman Cross said earlier, I am very proud of our council. We are a united council moving forward to provide leadership both now and in the future for this city.
Thank you. President Smith.
Thank you. I want to thank all the council members, and I especially also want to acknowledge that Reverend Burgess and Councilman Kraus and Councilman Lavelle have really mentored me a lot through this whole process, and were there anytime I had some questions. But I want to say that it's council. I've said this. I met with members over the past few months, and just saying that the power council has is in the budget, and if we want to have a say in the city, if we want to lead the city, if we want to do what we were elected to do, we have to stand more united and working together for the betterment of our city, and to show the strength of council. And I think that it's important for us to have the strength working with an administration that we can work together on some shared agendas, and we can work together with some differing opinions. I think it's really important for us to do that, especially now during such a transition, and not only during a transition in terms of leadership, but as we come out of the pandemic, and a lot of people are struggling and looking to council to hold the city together and to do what we think is right, know what is right, or hope that is right. And I think that we've done that. And I just want to thank you all, because even though there are some that disagree from time to time on different issues, I learn a lot from a lot of them, and I do learn a lot from the women on council as well. And I know that every one of you come from a place that you're representing a group of people, where you're coming from a place where you're trying to desperately do what is right in your view, your opinion, and in your heart. And so I want to thank you all, because you're some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. So I just want to thank you all for your help. And I want to thank, as I mentioned before, the clerk's office, the budget offices, the mayor's office, and our INP and Sergeant at Arms, everybody who puts on these meetings every week. But I think that the leadership of council has been really amazing to work with, because I'm learning a lot myself as we go along. So thank you all very much for all that you do today and every day. That's it.
Thank you. Any other remarks from members? If not, need a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.